Just don't understand the point of this interview. Can you stop filming, please?
He'll just... I mean...
Can you stop filming?
No, he's gonna continue filming. If you don't want to be in the video, it's completely fine. You're gonna remove it. If you don't want to be in the video, you're gonna remove it. You're gonna remove it.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the video.
You don't want to be in the video.
Take it off.
You don't want to be in the video.
Note: the interviewee told Imran to stop filming, delete all footage of him, and not include him in the video. The interviewee said Imran lied to him about having deleted the footage. Imran subsequently showed him the deletion, but upon being asked to show the contents of other memory cards in case they contained footage of him too, Imran refused. Imran proceeded to include the interviewee in the video, despite the interviewee having withdrawn his consent to be filmed and recorded, asked for all footage containing him to be deleted, and stated clearly that he does not want to appear on Imran's video. When asked by the interviewee what his YouTube channel was, Imran responded evasively that the interviewee will see it somewhere, while disclosing neither the name of the channel nor any identifying information. In Imran's video, the interviewee's face is hidden by a sticker, but his voice and the rest of his body can clearly be seen, and he has been identified by his friends who have watched the video. To respect the interviewee's request to not be included in Imran's video, which was evidently violated, I have altered his voice in this clip and will not be using any more clips that Imran included against the interviewee's will. So actually it's really difficult to be a content creator these days. I mean, not just these days, being a content creator in itself, I'm sure it's really difficult, and I'm not one, but I can only empathize with what an arduous task it must be, especially when it comes to looking for ideas and then executing them and then editing the videos and the content that you have and putting it out into the world and not knowing if it's gonna be well received or not. All of that hard work just for you to not know whether people are gonna like it, whether it will flop. I'm sure being a content creator has its challenges, and I think nowadays one of the biggest challenges that being a content creator probably poses is that not only do you not know if your content will be well received or not, there's also the constant fear of getting cancelled for your content, especially if you go out and purposely go and aggravate a whole community on the one day a year that they get to celebrate being their diverse queer selves. I'm sure it's really challenging trying to navigate that and live in constant fear of getting cancelled, especially if you purposely choose provocative questions. I can't believe that I'm starting a YouTube channel over this. I mean, I've always toyed with the idea of having my own channel and doing video essay kind of content, doing well-researched, well-thought material. And I'm not really interested in just creating content for the sake of doing numbers. I mean, I feel like monetizing everything and reducing everything in a numerical statistic that you can use as a KPI, I feel like that just removes all the joy away from it. So that's one thing. I really just want to create thoughtful and intelligent kind of content to not only spread knowledge, because I can't purport to be the purveyor of all the knowledge that there is in the world. But the whole point of an essay is to kind of explore different ideas, not just explore different ideas, but also oftentimes when you start an essay, you start with a question. I think that applies to a video essay as well. So I think what my aim is to not come with a fixed kind of answer in mind. As much as possible, I really want to strive to come with questions which I then explore using different pieces of evidence, using different framework, and putting all of these together to hopefully try to arrive at something new, even if it's not something new, right? I mean, this is a video essay and not like a whole academic essay that I'm trying to put out in a journal. You know, even if it's not anything new, then at least it's a process, it's a ride, it's a journey that I embark on together with whoever's watching this. So that's that. But I got distracted. I've been meaning to do video essay kind of content for a long time now, and I can't believe that my first video on this channel is gonna be a reaction video. And I love reaction videos, don't get me wrong, it's just not what I had set out to do, but I feel like this was something that was important to react to. So More background? Yes, more background. Okay, so I'm really hoping that the hair situation is working out, because as you can tell, it's nighttime. Actually, no, that's a lie. It's 5 a.m. and obviously I don't have any product in my hair and it's just gonna be a whole mess. And I'm hoping that the sound quality situation works out fine as well. If not, then too bad. I don't have like a professional setup for this. I'm literally just using my iPhone for both the sound and the video, so hope it goes well. So yeah, this content creator by the name of AimRun, I think, he put out this video yesterday titled "Trolling the LGBTQ plus community in Singapore." No matter how well-intentioned you claim to be in a video with this kind of title, like, I understand that YouTubers feel the need to create clickbaity kind of titles to reel audiences in, for better or for worse, but hello, like, you can't expect people to believe that you're going into this with good faith, okay? That aside, the description goes, everything is just a social construct at this point. Go crazy. The whole everything is a social construct thing is something that people said back in 2014. Back when there was like, not QAnon, but 4chan, yeah. Where like people would make all these jokes about people identifying as attack helicopters, claiming that everything's a social construct, or like, oh, if people can be transgender, then how about the transracial? So like 2014 to 2016 kind of discourse. I can't believe that we are still having that in Singapore in 2022, 8 whole years after that was a thing in the US. Like, oh my gosh, like, please. That's enough of a preamble. He went down to Hong Lim Park at Speaker's Corner the day that Pink Dot was held, asking people questions, and I've watched like a minute of it and decided to save the rest of it for this reaction video. God knows what we are going to see, and I want to capture all of it in the full freshness of it. So he went down to Hong Lim Park. Outside of it, basically he was doing his Vox Pop videos where you go up to strangers, ask them their opinion. I mean, Vox Pop in itself is perfectly fine, but for you to go to Hong Lim Park, to Singapore's version of a pride, not really parade in this case, but a pride festival, I guess, a pride celebration, LGBTQ plus pride, for you to go down to try to create content around asking people all these difficult, intrusive, personal questions, with questions obviously slanted in a direction that's not meant for a proper conversation, instead a direction that is kind of provocative. Like, anyway, let's dive into it, shall we? So here the interviewee says, "I don't understand the point of this video. Can we stop filming, please?" Can we stop filming, please? Proceeds to continue. Oh, so you're shitting on that message. Okay with the Andrew Garfield reaction clip. Honestly, there's really no point to this whole introduction that's very Casey Neistat wannabe, but I decided to just leave it in here because look at my face. Like, look at my face. It looks so good. No, but also, I find my facial gestures here hilarious. But also, look at that nose. This is just gonna be a whole bait and switch. That jawline.
Let's have a chat before we start, shall we? Damn, it's good weather today. We are at, what's it called? That's where we are right now. Yeah, let's go find a nice place in the park to chill and drink my best menu item in Liho. The weather is nice too, so that's good. It's not super scorching hot.
The uncle behind him just looking back at it. Oh my gosh, get to it already.
Okay, by the title of this video, you can see that it's quite interesting, you know? Trolling the LGBTQ community. Hey, you're right.
Quite interesting. Okay.
It's not trolling the LGBTQ plus Pro Max Lite community. It's more of like
Pro Max Lite. Apple, Tim Cook, I know you're watching this. The least you could do is to sponsor me for having to endure this foolery. Hilarious.
Chatting with them, you know, having a conversation.
If you're just chatting with them and having a conversation, why title your video "Trolling the LGBTQ plus community in Singapore"?
There to learn, you know. So we decided that we would go to the Pink Dot event that was held on the 18th of June. Was a Saturday at Clarke Quay. This whole shit, like everything's pink. Basically, the plan is to go there, ask a few questions, and if they feel uncomfortable, we're gonna cut because I'm not there to try to fight problem, but things happen, you know.
I'm not there trying to fight. I'm gonna hold you to that, AimRun.
So it's Pride Month. I thought, I guess I'll be a Ben Shapiro.
It's Pride Month, so I guess I'm gonna be a Ben Shapiro. The jokes write themselves. So for those of you who are not aware, Ben Shapiro is basically, he's a right-wing, what do we even call him? Not a troll, because he's not just an anonymous nobody. He is someone of, I wouldn't say significance, but he's a known person. Why don't we just resort to Wikipedia to tell us who he is? So Ben Shapiro is basically this right-wing political commentator. He's also a media host, apparently a lawyer, and he has his own column. Basically what you need to know about him is that he is one of the figureheads of the anti-LGBTQ plus movement, I suppose. He's very infamously anti-trans, him along with Jordan Peterson. I just find it hilarious that you have all these bro type of people who idolize Ben Shapiro and... anyway.
There is two things that might happen in this, you know. One is either I or us, we get to learn something new, you know, from this community, or I get fucked in the ass.
Wouldn't you like to know how that feels? Is that why you did the video? I'm all for people experimenting with themselves insofar as it doesn't hurt any other people. Hello? So there are two possibilities that he raises that could happen. One, that you could learn more about the LGBTQ plus community. In his words, the LGBTQ plus pro-max light community, or he could get fucked in the ass. Why? Because the questions that he's about to ask are probably gonna be phrased in a way that's meant to rile people up.
This is a very sensitive topic to a large group of people. So before we start, I'd like to give a disclaimer, you know. I'm not against them, they, her.
I'm not against them, they, her, she. You say that you're not against them, but you take every opportunity that you can to slip in a joke about pronouns. You think it's sleek. Is it sleek or slick? Slick. You think you're slick?
She, him, he. I am neutral, like they can do whatever they want, I couldn't really care less. But I do have some questions that I want to know the answer to.
I am neutral, I really couldn't care less. Yeah, I'm so neutral that I'm gonna create a whole video milking them for content.
So that's the point of this video. So good. And it's been 2 years since this event happened. I'm pretty sure it's because of the pandemic. For the past 2 years, they weren't able to put this event up. So now, after
3 years actually, since 2019.
You know? So yeah, I got this bright idea to ask abnormal questions. Questions that they probably wouldn't want to hear. Also, got
questions that they probably wouldn't want to hear. You know, I should start keeping track of all these claims that he's making so that I can see later on if it really is the case.
Mentioned that if their faces are blurred in this video, it's probably because they either came up to me and say, oh no, I don't want to be in the video, or before I publish this video, they message me, they reach out to me on like Instagram or whatever and DM me saying that they wouldn't want to be in the video. So like a few days ago, I managed to find the final guy that AimRun interviewed. When this guy asked AimRun where it will show up, apparently AimRun refused to tell him his channel name or his handle or any other identifying information and just told him, you'll see it online. Who the fuck does he think he is? So like AimRun's whole spiel about how the people who are blurred out is because they say they don't want to be in the video, or they messaged him privately to tell him they don't want to. Like, how are people supposed to message you if you don't tell them what your handle is? Also, one of the people who were interviewed is someone I know, and according to her, when she asked AimRun about what their YouTube channel was,
he refused to say as well. So this is obviously a consistent pattern of behavior. And I read to you her tweet. She says, like literally, I tried to ask them what the YouTube channel was and tried to look them up before they started asking questions. And they were like, lol, you're trying to research us? And rushed me to answer their silly questions. Like, you scared what? How famous do you think you are, Imran?
But I still do think that their comments are interesting, so I'm still gonna put them in, but I'm still gonna respect the privacy. If you don't want to be in the video, you're gonna remove it, but I'm still gonna respect the privacy. So I'm gonna blur their face, let's check the video out. Not trying to offend anyone, so let's get to share what's your pronouns.
She, her. Same. Yeah, same. Yeah.
Okay, so would you say it's okay for me to identify as she, her?
Yeah, nothing wrong what?
It's okay.
I mean like, yeah lah, nothing wrong. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
That's what we call a leading question. For him to say, would you say that it's okay for me to say that I identify as she, her? And him obviously looking like a typical masculine man. The fact that he asked this question while pointing at himself, there's a certain expectation for them to say no, I wouldn't accept that because you obviously look like a man. That's what he's probably trying to get them to say, but obviously girlies weren't easy to fall for this, so...
Yes! Is it okay if I identify as a 47-year-old?
I mean,
Is it okay if I identify as a 40 or 47-year-old? That's another very common right-wing anti-trans talking point, which is that identifying as a different age is the same thing as identifying as someone who is of a certain gender. Your age is kind of a logical marker where you objectively have lived a certain number of years on this earth. So obviously to say that you identify as something different would be delusional. So they think that this is a perfect parallel to someone who's transgender, who identifies as someone who is of a different gender from the sex that they were assigned at birth. It's really not it. I don't know if he's gonna do the same thing with race later on, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
I mean, if it makes you happy, then go ahead lah. And I'm not.
If it makes you happy, then go ahead lah. Yes, pop off queen. Hello from the editing cave. Something I want you guys to notice is how the girls, they are still smiling, but they are starting to look very nervous. Obviously, they do not feel comfortable with this. I know that some people might take this the wrong way and be like,
Aren't they just being asked harmless questions? What's there to be uncomfortable about?
but like, bear in mind that people go to Pink Dot expecting to celebrate and to support their friends. They don't go there with the intention of having to debate a complete stranger over things that they had no time to prepare for. Some of you might argue that,
Well, if they're going to Speaker's Corner to support the cause, shouldn't they know what they are supporting?
yeah, people should understand what they are supporting, but when it comes to more complex questions, is it really reasonable to expect that? And also, when you go to church or the mosque, a place of worship, if you don't know the Bible or your holy text inside out, can you then be a supporter of that religion?
Nothing like.
Okay, so it's a yes.
Yeah lah.
Yes! Okay, cool. What about if I identify as a Chinese?
Of course, the race thing came out.
I mean, you can identify as whatever you want, like it's basic.
These girls know what's up. They know what this guy is trying to do. They know that he's trying to get a reaction out of them.
Basic courtesy for me to respect what you identify yourself as.
I can identify as Chinese.
I think it's really up to you. I don't think it matters to me.
So yes,
Yes, it's up to you.
So if I told you I was a 47-year-old Chinese woman, is that believable?
I mean, like, if that's what you choose to like describe yourself as, then I have to respect that. I cannot come to you and say, no, you're a man. Like, I can't say that.
Same or similar. If that's what you think you are, then
God damn, I'm a goddamn 47 Chinese-year-old woman. Holy shit.
47 Chinese-year-old woman, okay.
Shit. Are you attending?
Yeah, I'm attending.
But you're waiting for someone?
Yeah, I'm waiting for a friend.
Okay, cool. Okay, what's your pronouns before we start?
He, him.
Okay, cool. Would you like assume that
I
I'm a he,
love
him
his
too?
vest.
Assumption? No, I'll probably just ask.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So if I identify as she, her.
I'll respect that and
Okay, cool. What about if I identify as a 42-year-old?
a 42.
Yeah.
Age-wise or like? pronouns wise?
Age. Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, so it's cool.
To me, age is just a number though. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Let's go. Okay, how about if I identify as a Burmese?
I don't see anything wrong with identifying yourself as anything that makes you happy.
Okay.
Even if like, I mean, to some people they might find it stupid that like, you know, they are like on the internet there are people like that identify themselves like meow or whatever. I don't care as long as you're happy, you don't affect anyone. Then like just fuck shit up, you know.
So
Oh,
if I come
okay.
to you and say that, okay, I'm a 42-year-old Burmese woman.
Period.
Alright, let's go. Alright, you enjoy your day. That's all. Thank you so much. Before we
This
start.
king does not realize that. I mean, this is basically sealioning. Okay, so sealioning is a critical term for a form of trolling that involves relentlessly pestering someone with questions and requests, such as for evidence or sources, typically with the goal of upsetting them and making their position or viewpoint seem weak or unreasonable. That's basically what he's done for the past three interviewees. And good for them, they managed to just, whatever, keep it cool. And they're probably thinking like, who's this weirdo asking me such weird questions? But, well, moving on.
You enjoy your day. That's all. Thank you so much. Before we start, I'm not gonna get anything wrong. What's your pronouns?
She, her.
You do you usually have to say it, or like when someone asks, then you say it?
Yeah, usually I think if they want to clarify, then I will help them lah. Usually by default I will get addressed by she, her.
What do you think my pronoun is?
I don't want to assume, but like by default lah, he, him.
How could you assume?
How could you assume? Shut the fuck up. Oh.
That?
I'm so sorry. That is so disrespectful.
Okay, I do. So, okay, could I identify as a 37-year-old?
Not identify as one.
Why not?
I think age is a very factual thing. It's less of a individualistic identity
So
thing.
age is less significant than gender.
In a
See what he's doing. So age is less significant than gender.
sense, yeah, because I think gender is it's someone's identity, it's who they are, it's how they want to present themselves.
Age is identity also, like you know, like
Yeah,
it prevents pedophilia, so
yeah.
Age prevents pedophilia? What are you even saying? Like, age prevents pedophilia? Huh? Okay, but like, just going back to the whole notion of, so the girl obviously fell into the trap of saying the whole age is factual, right? So the trap was for him to be able to say, oh, so you think age is more important than gender, whatever that means. What he means is that, so age is something that should be, it's an idea that should be upheld, and there's no bending about the rules, whereas gender is something that, if someone who is born a male or born assigned male at birth, then what he's saying is that they shouldn't be allowed to identify as a woman or someone who's non-binary, which these are terrible questions lah. Also, are we blatantly ignoring the fact that gender affirmation surgery has been around for literally decades? Sure, if you identify as being of a different age, then I am going to respect it insofar as it is not used as an excuse for you to go about your predatory pedophilic ways. So what most people know as sex change, now we refer to it as gender reassignment or gender affirmation surgery. It's been around for decades. As a matter of fact, in Singapore, it's been around since the 70s. The first gender reassignment or affirmation surgery was actually conducted in 1971 at KK Hospital. People keep on saying that Singapore is a conservative society. I think to some extent, and in some instances, that is no doubt true. But it's important to not look at Singapore and Asia at large as being inherently more traditional or more conservative, and the West as being inherently more advanced and more liberal and more open-minded. No, it's not true. That's not factual at all, and facts don't care about your feelings. Singapore has had a rich queer history, which I think is worth talking about in another video, but I don't want to stretch this video on for too long, so...
Definitely.
Age do matter, I think.
Yeah,
Identity.
it does matter in that sense, yeah.
So would you respect me if I say my age was 37-year-old?
I mean, no disrespect.
Okay, so you would address me as a 37-year-old?
Sure.
Okay.
Can, yeah.
Okay, why not, right? Yeah.
Why not?
As long as I'm happy.
Exactly.
Alright, cool. How about if I identify as a Indian guy?
I mean, okay, that is, you have to be who you have, I mean, wow.
Would you say like, no, you're not Indian?
This guy really came to Pink Dot trying to get a whole philosophic... Why don't you just go to school or some kind of philosophy like reading club, okay? Not fucking Pink Dot.
So you stop at race?
Yeah.
So I could be a 37-year-old woman, but not
I mean, like
Indian.
But I just don't think that's how it works. You know, that's not. It's not the same with sex and gender identity. That's a whole different story.
So 37-year-old woman, yes, but 37-year-old Indian woman, no.
I mean, I would draw the line at age, even. You know.
Okay, before I start, I don't wanna.
Love the outfit, but okay, before we actually do this, like with the previous thing, okay, there are three different kinds of matrices, right? One is gender, which is what this AimRun guy is trying to get everyone to somehow admit that it's ridiculous for someone to be transgender. And then there's age, and then there's race. Okay, so the whole thing with like, why is it not? Let's start with age, okay? Why is it ridiculous for someone to identify as being of a different age? Is that, you know, people of different ages, yes, they do experience the world in different ways, but age is something that it just happens to everyone, and it's a time marker, right? Unless you're able to bend time, you can't really say that you go from being 26 years old to being 12. And earlier on, he said something about pedophilia and how age is something that helps prevent that. No, the concept of age isn't something that prevents pedophilia. What prevents pedophilia is the law, right, which uses age as a marker which to some degree might be arbitrary, but the whole point is to prevent people who have a certain form of power over someone else by virtue of this age difference, because in our society we do look at age as being something that the more age you have, the more respected you should be. So the whole point of the law is to prevent people who are not old enough to make conscious decisions about sex from being taken advantage of by someone who's much older. So that's the whole thing with pedophilia. And going back to age, it's like the whole notion that age prevents
like, do you even realize what you're
whatever,
implying? Oh my
I don't think
gosh.
he's even considered that concept or that logic to as much depth as I just have. But that aside, like, for something like age, you can't just, I mean, if you choose to identify as someone who's whatever age, by all means feel free. Like, no one's gonna stop you, right? But for legal purposes. But okay, the whole thing with age, with identifying as a different age, tell me, when have you seen someone wanting to identify as a different age in a way that's not merely, oh, I wish I were young again, but in a way where they want to change their birth certificate to being of a different year, right? And also the thing with the whole like, why can't I identify as a different age thing is that it's just a distraction away from the whole trans thing meant to make being transgender look ridiculous, when actually it's a totally different thing. With trans people are transgender because the sex that they were assigned at birth, by virtue of the genitals that they have, it doesn't match up to how they would like to experience the world, how they would like to experience themselves and their body. For most non-trans people, for most cisgender people, an easy way to think about it would be the whole being born into the wrong body kind of thing. But even that is not something that's a rule or even something that many people subscribe to. But the thing with being transgender is that how you experience the world and how you would like to experience the world is different from how the world perceives you by virtue of the sex organs that you have. And because of this mismatch, for some people, it leads to conditions like gender dysphoria, where they face mental and psychological issues arising from the fact that they do not have this alignment in terms of the gender that they identify with versus the sex organs that they possess. Whereas for age, I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, so let me do a bit more research. Okay, so with the whole age thing, right, it's a much deeper philosophical question to be had, but when people talk about identifying as a different age, it's never in a good faith manner. It's always just to make being transgender look ridiculous. So what's up? Give me something new. When I didn't talk about the race thing, but for the race thing, like, race is a social construct, and I think part of the resistance that many people have to the idea of social constructs is that they think that it means that things are fake 100% with no biological evidence or support backing it up, when that's not true. For something to be a social construct, all it means is that a certain idea is something that is not inherent, meaning to say that it's not something that we've all always experienced, right? It's something that society over time has come to accept as being truths. Taking, for example, Chinese, Malay, Indian as races. Malay, I mean, it is a race, but Malay as a category in Singapore, it's racialized. It's a social construct in that it includes many different ethnic groups that are not just Malay, right? Groups like the Bugis, the Boyanese, all these different ethnic groups from the Malay Peninsula, from all over Malaysia and Indonesia, the Philippines as well. There are all these many different ethnic groups, which today we just group them as Malay, right? And don't really think twice about referring to these people as Malay. Same goes with Chinese, right? Before China even came to exist as a nation state, before China even came to exist as a border, it has been made up of so many different dialect groups as well as ethnic groups. Even today, there's such a huge diversity of ethnic groups. And the concept of a Chinese race didn't come about until much recently, right? So that's what is meant by race being a social construct, right? There are certain biological factors like maybe one's genetic makeup or the amount of a certain gene in someone's bodies, but these do not automatically make up each of these races, right? Race is a combination of factors such as ethnicity, biology, as well as politics. So
wanna like offend you or anything. Yeah, what's your pronouns?
In drag, I'm she, they, she, yeah.
When you're not in drag?
Not in drag is whatever pronouns you want.
Anything?
Yeah, anything.
Okay, cool. Is it okay if I identify as a she, her?
If you feel like you're a woman and you want people to treat you as a woman, then yes. If it's just for lols, then it's a bit more questionable.
She knows what's up. If it's just for the lols, then it's a bit more questionable. There were two parts to her answer. First, it was, if that's how you want to be seen, then yes, I'll respect it. If it's just for the lols, then she knows what's up.
I mean, treat you as a woman.
If you want people to see you as a woman.
How about if I identify as a 35-year-old?
No, I mean, are you 35?
I mean, biologically, I'm 21. I'm born in 2001,
So that's
but I identify as 35.
That's a different thing. Yeah, because
Age is less significant than...
it's a different because are you going to kill yourself because people think that you're 21, not 35?
I might.
It's a condition.
You see, that smart Vic, I might, like, no, let's be honest about our intentions, okay? You're a grown man, you're 21. Let's be honest about our intentions. If you want to have a discussion, if you want to have a conversation, let us do it in good faith and not ask leading questions with the express purpose of trying to get a rise out of someone, of trying to instigate them to be all provoked, right? And on Pink Dot, something that she mentioned also in response to him asking if she would respect him if he were to say that he identified as a 35-year-old, something that she said is something worth mentioning again, which is that, are you going to kill yourself because people do not see you as a 35-year-old woman? And this is what many of these edgy anti-woke bros fail to realize, or maybe not so much fail to realize as they just willfully ignore in the name of the lols, right? Which is, there are people who actually, so many people who kill themselves over transphobia, over society being so hostile to them, just trying to go about their lives as the gender that they perceive themselves to be. So to reduce that into a whole like transphobic talking point for the lols, for the shits and giggles, for content. How did your parents raise you?
Gender dysphoria, which people who are trans suffer from. It's not just about I feel like this, I want to do this. Yeah.
I get it a lot. You know, I feel like I'm a 35-year-old. Would you respect me enough to identify me as 35-year-old?
I'm 35. I feel like I'm 21 sometimes. I don't really care.
You will respect me enough to identify me as...
Yeah. I don't see what it has to do with gender. No.
There's nothing to do with gender. It's like a different thing. How about if I identify as a Chinese?
She knows what's up. I don't see how that's relevant to gender. Like, she saw the red herring and, you know, had no time for this bullshit.
Again, different, nothing to do with gender.
Yeah, nothing to do with gender. Yeah, it's a race. Race and gender is different thing, you know?
I don't think it's a relevant question.
Okay,
so it's not relevant.
It's a whole other topic. Yeah.
But
what do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't think anything. I don't think I have no thoughts.
Okay, so if I identify as Chinese, would you...
I have no thoughts. So
So you'd be neutral?
No opinion, no comments.
Right. Yeah, so you wouldn't say like, oh no, you're not Chinese, you're clearly like Indian or Malay?
Yeah, no comments. I don't really care. So we're talking about very theoretical things. Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to get into Pink Dot right now because it's a very long queue.
Yeah, it's a very long queue. Okay, you enjoy your day. She wasn't having it.
Of course she wasn't having it.
Oh shit, bro. Yo. Ma'am, your wallet, you dropped. Yeah. Before we start, what's your pronouns?
She, they.
She, they. Are you not going to ask mine?
Okay, so the sun's out. I'm just gonna go close the blinds because I have retinol on me and I don't want it to burn from the UV light. Oh, just that there no longer is a pink light. My breakfast just came and it's tortillas from Coffee Bean with hash browns. Not sponsored. Okay, so it's getting cold, so I put on a sweater. Of course, it had to be a pink sweater. Let's get back to business.
He wasn't having it. Oh shit, bro. Yo. Ma'am, your wallet. You dropped. Yeah. Before we start, what's your pronouns?
She, they.
She, they. Are you not going to ask mine?
What's your pronoun?
Your Highness. So you will be she, they, I will be?
Your Highness.
Let's go.
Very creative.
Wait, can I identify as she, her?
Yeah, of course.
Or clear cut, easy. Could I identify as a toddler?
What, can you identify as 3 or 4?
Yes.
I mean, the problem with this question is that there's vagueness to it. This question was, can I identify as she, her? The question can be interpreted in 2 ways. Most people's response has been, yeah, sure, you can identify as such. 2 ways of interpreting this question. First, if I were to identify as someone who uses she, her pronouns, would you be okay with that? So everyone says, of course, yeah, sure. The second way of interpreting it is, if I were to identify as someone who uses she, her pronouns, is it something that should be allowed? For the people he's been interviewing, I'm sure that they would agree he should be allowed to identify as someone who uses she, her pronouns. What he's trying to get them to do is to expose some kind of hypocrisy, some kind of contradiction between the answers for the 2 questions. How he does this is by coming to them, obviously looking like someone who presents as masculine, then asking something he thinks is absurd, which is whether he can use she, her pronouns. So he's trying to get them to say, oh no, cannot. Why? Because you look like a guy, what? But none of these people have fallen for it so far, so good for them.
But something I failed to mention is that that wasn't his only goal. By which I mean to say, trying to get people to show the hypocrisy, some contradiction between them claiming that you can take any gender pronouns you want and then not allowing him to use the pronouns that he would suggest. That wasn't the only point. Even if that failed, which it did. Another one of his objectives was probably to expose how ridiculous it is that people just use whatever pronouns they want. And you can see this in the way that his examples were mostly, would you accept if I go by she, her pronouns? Apart from that, there was one example in which he said his pronouns were your highness. Even if the interviewee did not take the bait and refuse to address him by your highness, which would then therefore expose the limitations of this level of respect that's given to pronouns. Apart from that, what he managed to achieve for his target audience was to show how ridiculous, nonsensical, how absurd everything was, that all these liberals, these woke crowd would just take any ridiculous pronoun and just accept it unquestioningly, and they would then take this as evidence of how berserk everything is. How, as one TikTok comment put it, so open-minded until your brain fall out. But it's not that. It's nothing to do with the brain. It's more to do with the level of respect that people were willing to accord, to the extent that they were able to suspend whatever judgment that they might have had, suspend any kind of disbelief, in the name of avoiding the possibility that the person they were talking to did sincerely go by those pronouns, thereby hurting him if they were to refuse to use whatever pronouns that he claimed he went by, or them, or your highness. How do the gender pronouns your highness even work? If people are mentioning you in the third person, would it still be your highness? Would you adapt it to their highness? I'm sure he hasn't thought this through, but logic, facts don't care about your feelings. Grammar facts don't care about your feelings.
Could I identify as a toddler?
What, can you identify as 3 or 4?
Yes. If I told you that, would you respect me and identify me as that?
Yeah, but then...
And that's the thing. Would you respect me? Obviously, all these people who are here at Pink Dot respect people who are transgender. They know that if they were to give a different response to this, they would be seen as hypocrites. Earlier on, that response where there was a distinction.
If you feel like you're a woman and you want people to treat you as a woman, then yes. If it's just for lols, then...
I mean, that would definitely affect how I treat you, right? And then that depends on what you do as well.
Right.
As when you identify as a 3 or 4, like, what are you going to do? Like, mommy, I want milk. Then what am I supposed to do?
Can I identify as Chinese?
Then that's different.
No?
No.
Why is...
Because my friends are here. You wanna join?
You want to join? I was just asking her, can I identify as a Chinese?
No, because race is different from like sexuality.
Yeah.
How different? Like, what are you saying?
Because racial identity is different from sexual identity. So it's like, how to explain?
In terms of racial identity, there's a lot of like cultural and heritage. Not saying there's no heritage involved in sexual identities, but it is not interchangeable when you like. It is something that you are born into and
Go off.
I mean, you're born into your sexuality too, so is to race.
race will be something that follows you, like continues with you, but then sexuality will be something that you discover. Yeah.
I mean, I could be born as an Indian, right? But in the long run, I discover that, you know, I want to be identified as Chinese.
Unless
Let's take a pause here because I don't think this is gonna go anywhere, but I think that line of reasoning has potential. You have to go back to the definition of gender identity and racial or ethnic identity. So let's talk first about gender identity. It's the gender you perceive yourself to be, whether it be man, woman, non-binary, or any of the many genders that exist. People who are trans are people whose perception of their gender does not line up with the sexual organs that they had when they were born. Whether they be someone with male genitals or female genitals at birth, if the way they perceive themselves, the way they understand the world, the way they want to be seen by the world, when there's a misalignment between that and the organs that they have, that's when you're transgender. So that's gender identity. Now let's talk about racial identity or ethnic identity. One reason why race is so frequently brought up as a counter argument when it comes to whether being transgender should be respected. I think one reason why race or ethnicity so often comes up is the fact that people think that race itself is also a fixed thing, a biological thing, that it's a fact that is incontrovertible. It's a fact that cannot be changed. If you are a Chinese person who suddenly claims to identify as a Malay person, to most people this would seem ridiculous. So because what these people are trying to prove is that transgenderism is ridiculous, that's why the whole race thing so often gets weaponized, gets mobilized as an argument, even though, as so many people have pointed out, they have nothing to do with each other. Going back to ethnic identity, how does one come to be a person who is Chinese or Malay or Indian? Let's just put aside the fact that even within these racial groups, there's so many other ethnic and racial groups within them. Within Indian, within Malay, within Chinese, there's so many different groups. So the distinction between race and ethnicity is one that is very complicated that not everyone is in agreement on. But the most common understanding is that your race and your ethnicity are dependent on your parentage and your ancestry. And a common misconception that people have is that a racial identity is something that you can definitely pinpoint in your DNA, and that's only true to a very limited extent. Your DNA can indeed help someone find out the region that your ancestors came from, which is why DNA tests are able to give us this person is 70% Chinese, 10% Thai. These percentages aren't an exact indicator of how many percent of a certain blood really is in a person. It's just an estimation of this person had an ancestor who came from this region. Ethnic identity is not something that you can ascertain from someone's DNA in a way that's foolproof. So that's one thing. But when people say that race or ethnicity or social constructs, as I said earlier, what they mean is not that it's completely fake. Because of the term construct, that's why people have such a misconception. What they mean is that the categories of race have been constructed by society, by the world, over time. We're able to look at people and verify that they are of a certain race, not because of any fixed quality that we can see right away, which is why there are people who we consider racially ambiguous. They possess certain facial features that we would usually associate with someone of another race, right? For example, someone who is of Malay parentage who happens to have eyes that look more Chinese, whatever that means. So people such as these expose the fact that ethnicity and race are not fixed categories that are inherent parent to a person, and this is it's a really deep philosophical debate. And then you also have this is something I've heard from my Malay friends, which is that there are many people who are classified as Malay who are actually of Chinese parentage. So their parents were Chinese, but during World War II, Chinese people were being persecuted in Singapore by the Japanese. There were families who gave their younger children away to Malay families. So these people were brought up experiencing life as a Malay person. For some of them, their families probably told them at some point they were actually of Chinese parentage, but it's completely possible for someone to have gone through everything, to have grown up as a Malay person without any perceived shortcomings in their lives, right? Because race is something that's not just biological traits, but also your experience of the world. So the guy was often asking questions around, what if I identify as Chinese? And he's someone who evidently had darker skin. He's someone who sounded like a Malay person because of his accent. Speaking of which, there's no one Singaporean accent. There are multiple Singaporean accents, some of them having a more Chinese intonation to it, others having a more Malay, Indian kind of intonation. So that aside, AimRun uses the example of, okay, what if I were to identify as a Chinese woman? Because he knows that the contrast between his skin color and what most people usually perceive Chinese people to be, he knows that there's a mismatch between the two. And I'm sure he hasn't considered the deeper philosophical implications of it, but there are plenty of Chinese people in China who have darker skin. There are some with very fair skin as well. So what do you make of that? It's just because in Singapore, the types of Chinese people that we have, the ones who have been here for more generations, most of them came from like the southern part of China, whereas the more recent waves of immigration have more Chinese people from all over China, including the northern part. Because there's this commonality in terms of where they came from, most of us usually think of Chinese people as having a certain skin tone. That aside, going back to the question about race and ethnicity as social constructs, so I've spoken about how we have people who genetically come from a certain parentage but are able to experience life fully as another race. Let's move on to something that's a bit more complicated, the notion of these categories being constructed. Before we actually have this CMIO categorization in Singapore, so CMIO is actually really a colonial idea. Colonial in that even the discourse of race itself to some extent is colonial, because the way we understood each other with regard to race wasn't as clean cut as like Chinese, Malay, Indian. Oftentimes when we think about the races that we have today, many of them have more to do with nationality, either of the person or of their parents. So we consider some people as being Thai ethnically, or Filipino, or even Indonesian, despite the fact that there are so many different ethnic groups in Indonesia. The Philippines as well. There are Chinese Filipinos, mestizo, but in Singapore, because race is something that's so mutable in general, something that can change in form, can change in definition depending on where you are. In Singapore, we just consider all Filipinos Filipino. Maybe for Chinese Filipino, if they pass as Chinese enough, then maybe some of us would consider them Chinese. But the whole point is that race, depending on where you are, people have a different understanding of race. Even the term Asian, obviously here in Singapore, we know that Asian includes a wide variety of people, but in certain parts of the world, certain Western countries, when you say Asian, they would typically think more of East Asians, and then they would think of people from the Indian subcontinent as Indian. That's one example that shows how even the labels for these categories, they change from context to context. And one final thing, another way in which race is socially constructed, even the importance of race as a category in itself. Everyone in the world shares so many similarities and differences. How have we come to prioritize race and ethnicity as a meaningful way of categorizing each other? How did this come about?
Okay, some of you might say it's important because culture is important. You want to make sure that we are able to preserve the very important cultural practices and traditions that we hold and not let them die out. I do think this is true, but what is culture? If culture is that important, why have we in Singapore decided to make Mandarin Chinese the second language that all Chinese people in Singapore have to learn in school, which has led to many young people not being able to speak their own, we call it dialect in Singapore, but they really are languages of their own. So why is it that even if your heritage, your culture is Teochew, Hokkien, Hakka, or Cantonese, regardless of what your culture is so important, we have not prioritized this. Instead, we've prioritized practical concerns, economic concerns, and made everyone learn Mandarin. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good or bad thing. That's an argument for another day. What I'm saying is, what about culture? What parts of culture are important? If culture is so important, how have we decided to flatten the diversity of Chineseness? You can argue that there are still things like clan associations and stuff like that, but back to the question, how have we come to decide that race and ethnicity is a meaningful way that should be prioritized in terms of categorizing people?
And I don't want this video to get too long.
Spoiler alert, it did.
It's a whole nother question. How have we come to prioritize race as something that holds any meaning when it comes to grouping people into different categories? Does it matter that someone's ancestors came from China, the Malay Peninsula, the Indian subcontinent? Does it really matter? Let's just do a thought experiment. At independence, instead of retaining the Chinese, Malay, Indian, Eurasian categories that the British colonizers had set for us, let's say that we didn't adopt that and just collapsed everything into one Singaporean race. How different would Singapore look like today? Would people still be so hung up over these differences in terms of cultural practices, in terms of skin color? Or would there have been more mixing where instead of fixating on the differences in cultural practices between people of different groups, what if all of us just saw each other as one Singaporean race and the practices that we came from just started to organically mix together? It might seem bizarre, but if you think of certain traits or practices that we associate with our race, aren't these things that people of other races or other cultures practice as well? For example, the Lunar New Year. It's something that's celebrated by Chinese people, Thai people, Vietnamese people. Of course, there is some history of mixing, some history of Chinese emigration from the land that's now called China down to other Southeast Asian countries. Before all of these categories became really fixed under colonial administration, there was so much mixing and miscegenation between different races, and there was so much sharing and combining of different cultural practices. So to make the argument that it's important to retain these categories that are based on ethnicity or race on the basis of the preservation of cultural practices is honestly quite strange. Anyway, and that actually reminds me of one thing I wanted to talk about, which is ethnic identity in Singapore. How is it decided? It's decided based on your parents, right? And I think there's a very interesting question in that. What if you are of mixed parentage? So we'll just consider them mixed on a day-to-day basis, and we don't really fixate too much over what exactly that mix is, right? But in terms of official documentation, I believe that in Singapore, it's always been that you adopt the racial marker that your biological father has. I think recently they allowed the parents to choose who's to be the first race and who's to be the second race on the IC, if I'm not wrong. Let me do a quick check.
So yes, in Singapore, we actually allow children of mixed heritage to have what we call double-barreled race, which means having both of your parents' racial marker combined to one, and you have an option as to whose race goes first. Or you could even just choose one of these. In fact, you're allowed to change your race twice, once before the age of 21 and once at or after the age of 21. So you can follow either your parents' race or an acceptable hybrid race. Or you may choose a double-barreled race. So all this really goes to show is that race in itself, as a category, it's not one that is fixed. We even allow people to choose a race within limitations, of course, that feels the most apt in describing their ethnic identity. whether it be a double-barreled race or just one of your parents' races.
So it's based on your parents' racial markers. That is how ethnic identity is defined in Singapore, right? So based on that definition, for someone to identify as another race, let's entertain this thought for just a bit. What does it mean for me to identify as, let's say, Chinese? I'm Filipino. I'm not Chinese Filipino at all. What if I were to say I identify as Chinese? What does that really mean? And why do I identify as Chinese? I speak Mandarin. I learnt Mandarin since I was in primary school. Many of my friends are Chinese by virtue of the fact that Chinese is the majority race in Singapore. And also, I hate to admit this, but the spaces that I have navigated through my life, in short, my educational pathway, as well as the careers that I went into, they just tended to have more people who are Chinese, a disproportionate amount. Can I then say that I identify as Chinese since I speak the language, most of my friends are Chinese? Or are there any missing criteria? So the fact that my parents are not of Chinese heritage limits me from being able to claim a stake to Chineseness. But then you might ask, okay, but for gender identity, they were born with sexual organs, what? It doesn't lie, what? So how can they suddenly decide to be of another gender? And this question has an underlying assumption that choosing to identify as someone who is of a gender that is not aligned with the sexual organs that you had at birth, there's the assumption that this is a flippant decision, something that's just taken lightly. You wake up one day, oh, okay, yeah, I want to be a girl now. But no, people don't just wake up and decide they want to be a girl all of a sudden. In all of these Ben Shapiro style interviews, these people fail to realize trans people don't just decide to be trans on a whim. For many of them, for most of them, it's a lifelong struggle. Many people know that they are trans from a really young age. Some people only realize in adulthood. Regardless of when you realize that who you want to be perceived as, regardless of what age you are, when you realize that the gender that you want to experience the world as is different from the one associated with the sex organs that you were born with, regardless of what age you are. That's something that doesn't come as an easy decision. Not all trans people go through gender affirmation surgery. Not all trans people decide to go under the knife to have their sexual organs match the gender that they identify with. Not all trans people do this, and not all want to do this. And regardless of that, for many trans people, this is a whole psychological issue, and it's a whole struggle that they deal with every day. Many trans people have gender dysphoria. Some of them don't, but certainly not a light decision that people make. No one just wakes up and chooses to be oppressed by society. Among these like edgy right-wing bros, there's often the idea that trans people or LGBTQ plus people in general are doing it just for attention, just to be quirky. And the whole kids these days are all going by all these very funny gender pronouns, what they, them, what she, she. The thing they don't realize is that, let's say that there are those who are doing it just to be special. Let's say that there are such people. So what? Let them lah. Are they disrupting your life in any way? We don't know how many percent of people who identify as trans or non-binary are those who genuinely identify as such. And we don't know how many percent of them are just doing it to be trendy or quirky. But regardless of that percentage, are you really going to risk the possibility of making life difficult for someone who genuinely feels that way, just so you can ridicule everyone else who is doing it just to be quirky? It's honestly quite cruel, and sympathy is free.
And because race is different from sexuality. I think she summed it up quite well.
So no, yes or no? No.
As in...
Oh, alright. Have a nice day. You know what that means? You know what that means? You know what that means?
What does that mean?
It's, see what you discover gender, right? But for race also it's the same, what? Because like, what if I say, in the long run, I like Chinese New Year. I like ang paos. I like
你喜欢农历新年？你喜欢红包？你喜欢什么？
lo hei. I like pork.
你喜欢猪肉？就是你的问题啊！你会讲华语吗？ Okay, but honestly, not all Chinese even speak Mandarin because Mandarin is not an inherent part of being Chinese. I keep making these jokes and then reeling myself back in because I'm too wise to be committing this foolery.
I like Chinese food. The hawker center, Chinese food. That's what I go for every single day. I want to dress as Chinese, like Chinese cultural wears. Yeah, so I want to be identified as a Chinese. So
You like all of these things. You like pork, you like Chinese New Year, ang paos, Chinese girls maybe. But is ethnic identity defined by the cultural things you like?
why not? It's something I discover. So it's the same thing. What's your pronoun?
I go by Annie actually.
Annie. Okay.
I use primarily she, her, but I also go by he, they.
Do you?
So, I don't know where this is gonna go, but something I also wanted to make mention of is how, there are people who go by any pronouns or people who go by multiple, so she, they, or he, they. To someone who's not very kind to the whole gender pronouns idea, it might seem ridiculous to go by any pronoun. But okay, a very short summary of why there are people who go by any pronouns. So for them, obviously they are of a certain sex, right? Maybe they are transgender, maybe they are not. But regardless of that, they see that pronouns are something that aren't essential to their way of understanding themselves, their gender, in relation to the world. They'd rather just adopt this kind of fluid kind of mood, one that is not fixed. So if you want to refer to them as he, she, or they are okay with it. And these people tend to be of the belief that gender is something that's not important, in their lives at least, or in the world at large. So because of that, they are completely okay with going by any gender, and they want you to actually choose for yourself what gender to refer to them as. No, what gender pronouns to use in reference to them.
Just adding a note that there are many people who actually go by any pronoun because they are trying different pronouns out and seeing which one feels the most appropriate for them. So that's perfectly fine as well.
Believe in love is love.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what's the definition of love is love?
I just think that people should be free to love as long as it's like, not something like child and adult, something disgusting like that. I just think that if a male and a male or if a female and a female, love each other, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
You can be whoever you want to be, you can love whoever you want to love, and yeah, but it's totally acceptable. Yeah.
Mention
Go off, girlies. Okay, they didn't say what their gender is, so I'm just gonna say the gender neutral girlies. When I say girlies, I mean the girls and the gays. But go off.
adult and a child.
Yeah, I think that's like totally gross. They're definitely not part of LGBT.
You look at his eyes. AimRun, you're up to no good. And these are young adults who seem younger than you, and here you are trying to lead them astray in your very flawed line of reasoning. Gosh, AimRun. Have some shame.
Adult and a child.
Yeah, I think that's like totally gross. They're definitely not part of LGBT community if anyone's thinking that,
What if they claim love is love,
Yeah, well then I think they're really dumb because a child and an adult having a relationship is not the same as a man and a man having a relationship. It's just, that stuff is just wrong.
But love is love,
But,
But love is love. AimRun, I'm sure it has not crossed your mind that love is love is just a slogan, first of all, but let's consider the whole pedophilia thing between a child and an adult. A child and an adult have gone through very different experiences in their lives. An adult has probably gone through most of what the child has gone through, but the adult is someone who is currently, by definition of being an adult, is of a certain maturity level. And of course you can say that children can also be mature, but that's not the point. The point is that pedophilia is illegal because most children in fact, are not at the level of maturity that would prevent them from being taken advantage of by adults. And as an adult, What could a child offer to you romantically and sexually that you wouldn't be able to receive best from a fellow adult? So that's totally different from the whole same-sex love thing. Don't be a fool. Oh my gosh.
There's a difference.
How about a mother and a son?
That is also disgusting.
But they love each other, you know?
There's a difference though.
What was the difference?
The difference is that
AimRun, you tell me what's the difference. Do you have an answer yourself?
that is like incestuous, and there's nothing inherently incestuous about a man and a man or a woman and a woman. And when it comes to things like pedophilia, it's wrong because a child doesn't have the mental capacity to consent, and that's why it's wrong for an adult to be in a relationship with a child. But if it's a man and they're both within, you know, legal age boundaries together, it means that they both have consent to one another, and that doesn't make it, you know.
So what you said just now, there's an exception, because what you said just now is anyone can love anyone.
Yeah, well, that anyone can love anyone is within those boundaries of morality, in my opinion.
So love is love with conditions.
I suppose.
So wouldn't that like completely disregard the title of love is love?
AimRun, you're being a real tool at this point. Love is a slogan. It's not legislation. Legislation means law, by the way.
I mean, it's
There's
also
conditions.
kind of common sense.
I feel
you
like
know?
not everyone should be content creators. Like, I feel like people should have to take an exam to be a content creator. Like, some baseline level of intelligence would be great.
Okay, that's all you have to say. You got anything else to say about it?
Be who you are for your pride. Don't hide. Okay, thank you.
You know, love is love.
They handled it so well. Like, they are queens in the making, and I'm excited to see where they go in life.
Love, but conditionally. You know, there's things you take note.
Yes, AimRun. Love is love, conditionally. Why? Who are you trying to pray after?
Oh, so love is not love, you know?
So love is not love. So love is love with conditions, therefore love is not love. I think this poses a very deep philosophical conundrum. One that not even Plato himself considered. Love is love with conditions, therefore love is not love. It's kind of the same as saying you can walk around without a mask, but with conditions. And the condition is that you are outdoors. So does that then mean you cannot wear a mask? Love is love, but with conditions. Therefore, love is not.
So my question is, do you believe in love is love? Okay, cool. What was your definition of love is love? Oh, so no, bestiality, no. So you draw a line in bestiality. How about necrophilia? Okay, how about a 50-year-old and a 6-year-old? Fine, love is love, right? How about mother and son? So you don't believe in the incest stuff? You don't believe in that? So a mother and a son had an intimate relationship.
So you see, like, AimRun, you fool. You didn't even make it clear that you're referring to romantic love, and you're so eager to hop on him saying that between 50-year-old and 6-year-old is okay, and between mother and son is okay, with him foolishly thinking that you just meant pure love and not whatever twisted idea you're trying to suggest.
No, but they love each other. Yeah, you're open to say anything you want. So mother and son, no. But what if they love each other?
I don't understand your questions. You're not well formed. Sorry, sure.
Against the law.
This guy is really sharp. Like, AimRun was like, against the law, and this guy caught within a few seconds what he thought he could pounce on.
Everyone could love everyone. Does that include mother and son? But not in an intimate way? Is that what you're saying?
At this point, the guy says, "This is a very strange interview."
So we want to learn, you know. Which
We want to learn, shut the fuck up. You don't want to learn. You're here to instigate people and get a rise out of them. You need to learn, shut the fuck up. You want to learn, you go and Google it yourself.
we want to learn about, because we heard about this love message.
Because we heard about this love message. Shut up.
Right? So we were thinking, how about the mother and son? How about a 50-year-old and a 6? No. We want to learn, honestly. Truly. So is there a line being drawn? Sorry if I make you uncomfortable.
Sorry if I make you uncomfortable. That's the whole point, AimRun, isn't it? To come to Pink Dot, the one day a year that LGBTQ plus people get to celebrate their diversity and celebrate their difference and celebrate their non-cis heterosexuality. Coming here and asking leading questions, right, aimed at suggesting links to other forms of insanity and immorality, and then coming and pretending to be like, oh no, sorry that I'm making you feel uncomfortable. Do your parents love you? AimRun?
Just don't understand the point of this interview. Can you stop filming, please?
No, he's gonna continue filming. If you don't want to be in the video, it's completely fine. We're gonna remove it. If you don't want to be in the video, we're gonna remove it.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the video.
You don't want to be in the video.
Take it out.
You don't want to be in the video.
He said, if you don't want to be in the video, it's fine, we'll remove it. And then King Shit responded, I don't want to be in the video. What's he doing here then with a big ass emoji over his face? That's not the definition of removing it. AimRun. Do you need me to look up removal in the dictionary? Have some respect.
Note: the interviewee told Imran to stop filming, delete all footage of him, and not include him in the video. The interviewee said Imran lied to him about having deleted the footage. Imran subsequently showed him the deletion, but upon being asked to show the contents of other memory cards in case they contained footage of him too, Imran refused. Imran proceeded to include the interviewee in the video, despite the interviewee having withdrawn his consent to be filmed and recorded, asked for all footage containing him to be deleted, and stated clearly that he does not want to appear on Imran's video. When asked by the interviewee what his YouTube channel was, Imran responded evasively that the interviewee will see it somewhere, while disclosing neither the name of the channel nor any identifying information. In Imran's video, the interviewee's face is hidden by a sticker, but his voice and the rest of his body can clearly be seen, and he has been identified by his friends who have watched the video. To respect the interviewee's request to not be included in Imran's video, which was evidently violated, I have altered his voice in this clip and will not be using any more clips that Imran included against the interviewee's will.
I mean, you can just tell that he wasn't there to have a conversation. He wasn't there to learn, right? If you're there to genuinely learn, your questions wouldn't consistently be, would you respect me if I were to say that I identify as this, and then try to make it look ridiculous by making your suggestions as absurd as possible, saying you identify as a 57-year-old Chinese woman. Like, if you truly wanted to learn, you'd be going up to people and asking them about their life stories. You'd be asking people about how they came to realize that they are of a certain sexual orientation or gender identity. If you truly wanted to learn, I mean, you would go and Google things for yourself, but I understand that sometimes you want to hear from real life people, right? Your question would be something more along the lines of, when did you first realize that you are whatever? Or if you wanted to ask a thornier question, something that's deeper and more complicated, you would come up with the question and ask it to someone who is an authority when it comes to these things, and not random passersby at Pink Dot. People who are there to support the cause, not to have a philosophical debate about transracialism. If you really wanted to learn, like, come on, let's not kid ourselves. AimRun. And I think the most ridiculous thing about this entire video is that He obviously came to Pink Dot with these very loaded leading questions, knowing that they would probably provoke some kind of reaction that would be able to get him his views. And not only that, reactions that would be able to give people the idea that, oh, these people don't really know what they are supporting. These people don't really know what they are talking about. If they are, then they would be able to give me fully formed answers to my very simple questions, which, as a matter of fact, are not that simple, okay? That aside, people come to Pink Dot to celebrate diversity, to celebrate their difference from heterosexual society, to embrace themselves, to support their friends who are LGBTQ+. People go there expecting to have fun, expecting to enjoy, expecting to be in a good mood. No one goes to Pink Dot expecting to have a philosophical discussion. If that's what you want to have, why don't you find a queer academic and try to debate with them instead? I mean, whether or not you'd be able to hold your own is another question, but the mere fact that this is the foolery that you decided to engage in. Like, tell me, how would you feel if it's Hari Raya and someone of a certain religion came up asking to debate philosophical questions pertaining to your religion in a way that's pointed purposely to suggest that it's all nonsense? How would you feel? It's not very respectful, is it? AimRun? Are you really a content creator or a discontent creator? Ha ha ha. But at the expense of an already marginalized group, and on the one day that they celebrate diversity as a community right outside the venue. Of course, everyone is welcome to the speaker's corner, right, in Hong Lim Park, right? It's a public place. But going there with that kind of intention, and then taking the hostility when they realize what you're doing as a sign that they are not willing to have civil discussions, are not willing to be challenged about their opinions, that's low. Anyway, that's all. It's morning, it's 8 a.m. I'm riled up. I don't know if I'll be able to go to sleep, but oh well, I mean, everyone wants to be a content creator these days, but I think something people need to bear in mind is that the kind of content you create really, it seems too obvious for me to have to say it, but it really speaks volumes about your character as a person. I get that content creators need to get their views and clicks, but if you're someone who stoops at nothing to get those clicks, going the extent of provoking an already marginalized group, then I'm sorry to say, but people can see you for who you are. So a typical YouTube reaction video would just stop there and have your usual like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon kind of message. But pauriahcarey is anything but typical. Hello, have we learnt nothing through the course of this video? So anyway, I think it's important for us to take a step back and take a look at what we just watched. What was all that about? I mean, obviously Imran's real intention wasn't to learn. I mean, sure, let's give him benefit of doubt that he was there to learn. The questions were structured apparently more to provoke rather than to encourage learning. So what was that all about? And I think when looking at the real intention behind the video, it's not even that difficult to tell if you have been paying attention. And you don't even have to make any inference or guesswork. You just have to listen to the man himself.
So it's Pride Month. I thought, I guess, I'll be a Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro.
What does it mean to be a Ben Shapiro? Does it simply mean being unable to give your wife pleasure? No, I'm sure he does a very good job at that. But what does it mean to be a Ben Shapiro, especially on Pride Month?
creating content is easy. What's difficult is being honest with your intentions. And I believe that at 21 years of age, it's not too late. So yeah, just some very good questions for us to think about, and to think about where all of this is going, to see where all the hordes of supporters on TikTok and YouTube, where that is coming from, and do we have something to be worried about here in Singapore? Okay, so I guess this is a part where I'm supposed to say like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon, but honestly, like, sure, share, yes please, don't subscribe. Hopefully you'll see my videos when it comes up lah, but then, okay lor, subscribe if you want to lor, but then like, don't need lah. Don't subscribe. Okay, but anyway, tell me what kind of video essays you want me to do next. I know I promised a few topics earlier, so you can help me out by showing me what there is demand for in the comments, and I'll try my best to find a new way of saying it, especially in a Singaporean and Asian context, because there are so many creators I respect from around the world, but when it comes to thoughtful and somewhat intellectual content, there are a few creators whom I like, but yeah, in terms of long form video essays, I feel like there can be more, so let me know what you want.